Hello everyone, and welcome to In His Time with Father Mike, chapter 10, entitled Time Out, Rest a While. The great C.S. Lewis once wrote, "If you picture time as a straight line along which we have to travel, then you must picture God as the whole page on which the line is drawn." In Mark chapter 6, verse 31, Jesus says to his disciples, "Come with me by yourselves to a quiet place and get some rest." Sometimes we just need a rest. It is vital for our well-being and overall health that we take some Sabbath time each week, and sometimes for an extended period of time. The word Sabbath is taken from the Hebrew verb Shabbat, meaning to stop, to cease, or to keep. Way back in the spring of 2016, my church council granted me a 3-month sabbatical, a time to refresh and renew. The time away from the usual routines of church life proved to be a great blessing, a great opportunity to look for some of those kairos moments. On returning, I submitted a report to the church about my time away, and I include some of it here for your own reflection. I hope you may find something that proves beneficial to you. Early in my sabbatical, I quickly found that the greatest gift of all was simply the time not to plan too much or even do too much, but to let the day unfold in the goodness of God and try to be attentive to His presence along the way. In short, the gift of a different pace. I walked a lot. I visited my spiritual director, sat a lot, attended a few day conferences, and I read some. I carried with me 2 personal questions throughout my sabbatical. Here is the first one. How do I live and serve my Lord faithfully, trustingly, and peacefully in areas of my life that still need to be healed? In stepping aside from the usual routines, our inner landscape does become a lot clearer. It is amazing how even in ministry for God, one can run away from God. The Holy Spirit, the wonderful counselor, often takes us to places in our hearts that we would rather not go. Former Roman Catholic priest and author Henri Nouwen helps here when he talks about wounded healers. I have often thought about how the resurrection did not remove the wounds of Jesus, but glorified them. Only His wounds can speak to our wounds, and He can use our wounds to help heal others' wounds. God's servants must be honest. God continues to love us in every detail of our lives and whispers to our hearts. My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, wrote St. Paul, I will boast all the more gladly of my weaknesses, so that the power of Christ may rest upon me. There is no place for arrogance in ministry. God can use us, or God can cast us aside as He wills. No one is indispensable except the Lord Himself. Out of the abundance of the heart the mouth speaks, says Jesus. From the heart flow all the choices, thoughts, and words of a person's life. Proverbs 4 tells us, keep your heart with all vigilance, for from it flow the springs of life. The heart in the book of Proverbs regularly refers to the center of one's inner life, an orientation towards God, from which a person does all their thinking, feeling, and choosing. If ministry is to have integrity, it must flow from the heart. I hope to be a peaceful friend of the Lord and to serve Him joyfully in every area of my life, for the simple love of Him and His people. My second question was, what has God put me on this earth for? In a game of soccer, when the coach calls your name from the sidelines, the referee blows his whistle, and your shirt number comes up on the board, you know that it's time to leave the pitch and return to the coach's sideline bench. My sabbatical was like having my coach, Jesus, call me back to his bench. It was time to get off the pitch for a while. My son Malachi called it my sabbatical seat. I spent many peaceful mornings sitting here in Wilband Creek Park in Abbotsford. There was a sign on the nearby highway, the Mission Highway, that read, "Helping you see clearly." That became a prayer of mine. St. Augustine addressed the Lord as the sweet light of my uncomprehending eyes. I didn't need to travel somewhere far away to find God. As author Gretchen Rubin has said, I didn't want to reject my life. I wanted to change my life without changing my life. Finding more happiness in my own kitchen. I knew I wouldn't discover happiness in a faraway place or in unusual circumstances. I needed to find a way to do it here and now. I need to change the lens from which I viewed everything familiar. I was not so much seeking happiness, I was seeking God. I had been on the pitch for 27 years as an ordained minister, 14 of those here at St. Matthew's Anglican Church. There was much to reflect on as I sat there on the coach's bench. The coach, the Lord himself, and I talked about my ministry over those years. He reminded me of a few things and put a few things in my heart for my remaining years of ministry, whatever form that may take. He reminded me that what is most important in life and in ministry is my relationship with him. He cares about this more than anything else. It's not really about how well you play the game or how many goals you score. It's about being part of a team, understanding what the coach would have you do, and doing it simply for the love of him. How well we know the coach dictates how well we play. If we love him, we feed his sheep. Belonging to Jesus is all that really counts. I recall returning home from a ministry trip many years ago when my daughters Naomi and Evangeline had just begun school. I brought back some candy from the country I had just visited. As I gave the candy to Naomi, she looked disappointed. I wondered about this and asked my wife Marianne about it. Marianne responded with words that have always struck with me. Naomi has really missed you while you have been away. She doesn't want your candy, she wants you. We often come to God with all kinds of candy, works, in our hands, but there is nothing sweeter to him than our very selves. It's us he wants. While attending the New Wine Leaders Day Conference in Vancouver, BC while on sabbatical, I was able to meet up with an old friend and colleague from my clergy days as a vicar in London, England. He told me he was as passionate about God's kingdom now as he ever was. I asked myself if I could say the same. Meeting up with him again reminded me of the story of the original Olympic Games in Greece, where the final race was a run up a mountain. Each of the contenders held a flaming torch as they ran. The winner of the race was the one who crossed the finish line first, with the flame still burning. You were disqualified if your flame had gone out. St. Paul once wrote, "Do you not know that in a race all the runners run, but only one receives the prize? So run that you may obtain it. Every athlete exercises self-control in all things. They do it to receive a perishable wreath, but we an imperishable. So I do not run aimlessly. I do not box as one beating the air, but I discipline my body and keep it under control, lest after preaching to others, I myself should be disqualified." O Lord, light the fire again. I recall a morning when, as I got up from my coach's bench and went for a walk around the park, I decided to stop at the first bridge I came to look at the birds on the water. At that very moment, a majestic hawk swooped down and picked up a fish in its claws and flew away with its prey. I was only a few feet away from this magnificent sight. The hawk could certainly see clearly. A man I had never met at the time walked by and exclaimed to me on that bridge, "You couldn't have had a better gift for the day, could you? You timed that perfectly. You should write it down." I asked myself what it was that caused me to leave my coach's bench at that very moment, enabling me to see this sight. It was God's perfect timing, His grace. It was a kairos moment for sure, and I've written it down. God has put me on this earth for relationship with Himself, to love me and help me live as His friend, to find freedom in serving Him, and to prepare me for an eternity of life with Him. I am His child, and I am His priest. So here I am, back on the pitch. My dear brothers and sisters of St. Matthew's, thank you all for giving me time on my coach's bench. The apostles to the Hebrews once wrote, "So then there remains a Sabbath rest for the people of God. For whoever has entered God's rest has also rested from his works as God did from his. Let us therefore strive to enter that rest." Amen.